Okay, what I've done is I've modified this. This was our add our numbers. Now if I run it, let's just see what it does.
What? How did it not work for you, JC?
Now if I put one in here,
Not right. How's that not right?
be sure to focus on this,
Sorry.
because you'll ask me what this code does, and I won't repeat it. So you put one in there, then you come up here, you put two, and it's summing them, right? Like that. Um, let's see, Xcode. You say, well, what's the difference? What did change? Well, up here at the top, at our UI view controller, I moved the declaration for our variable up here. This way, you can use it anywhere. So kind of the same idea as what we talked about before. I set current index. Now this current index is kind of the same principle as what you saw in Android Studio. I initially set it equal to -1 because there's no entries in our array. Now Xcode's easier on this. And last time I didn't have this separated very well, so I think it was a little hard to read. So I put some documentation into it. And I say this is a code to add new numbers to your array called nums. So this would be in its own button. So this bit of code right here. And pretty much you can just copy this straight in there. So you can really not much change at all. What I do is I declare one variable. It's a float, in1. The sum. That shouldn't be there. That should be down here, but let me put that down here. The sum float. Okay, so I declare one variable, in1's float, and then I bring in t1.text. This is our first text box. And I change it to a float, do my exclamations here like you see, and then I just simply do a nums.append. So I don't have to increase the index or anything. Now I do want to, what I didn't put in here, which I should. No, actually I don't need a current index. Never mind. There I go lying. You don't need this. Because I programmed this differently. Is everybody okay on the append?
Yeah.
So, isn't that easier in Android Studio?
Very much so.
3 lines of code to add a number to your array. Now to print out the sum, you declare the sum float. Now this should be in its own button, by the way. This is a different button.
Okay.
In your case, this would be the button to print out the average, the variance, and your array. So you can do it all in one button. When you push that button, it prints the average, prints your variance, prints your array.
Okay.
Which means, how many labels or edit text would I need?
So you have 3 labels.
Yeah.
And then you have 2 buttons.
This would be one button for this. But you're right, you'd have a button up here also. So you'd have a button here, one button. And how many labels would I need up here?
However many put down to be
0.
0.
Yeah, because you just need 2 text fields.
Would I need 2 text fields?
3.
1. Or actually, it's called text fields in this, isn't it? Because we're bringing in a number at a time. So you wouldn't need these other 2. I ripped this off from the code we did the other day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
so we will just have one text field
Uh-huh.
and then three. Okay. It's not hard.
So one button here, one text field. That one text field then populates the array. Down here, you'll have one button, and you have three labels, and it'll print out the average.
Variance and the array.
Yeah. Now, since I gave you the average in the other class, let me go ahead and give you the code for that. You'd declare average,
Yeah.
and then down here, you'd say average is equal to the sum divided by, and you do nums.count. That nums.count refers to how many is in your array.
That is so much easier.
Except for it doesn't like it. Binary operator. Float integer. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Oh, well. Float. Is it capital or lowercase? Let's try that.
No, I don't like that either.
Use an unresolved, okay. Is it capital? That looks better. Variable average is written to, but never read. So we haven't done anything with average. So this is where you then
Would print it to the average.
print it to the average.
Okay. That's way easier.
And so for your variance, and I'll go over the code again for the variance, so it's in the video. You basically would copy, kind of the same idea, where you copy this, and you'd modify it. Where in the world is my? There it is. Just again, refresh your memory. Index goes from 0 up to 1 less than your number of entries in your array. The project for this, you're going to build upon this concept that we did before. You're going to print the average, which pretty well you have the code for that. Print the variance, and then you print the values of the array. Now, printing the values of the array will be a little bit different. I'll talk about that. But again, if you enter in 138, to figure out the difference between them, you just subtract 1 minus your average, 3 minus your average, 8 minus your average. Average, again, is taking your numbers, adding them together, and dividing by how many you have, which is stored in nums.count. So it's a lot easier here. Then this is num minus average squared, so you take this value squared. And this is just showing you how to do it by hand, so that when you're trying to program it, you know how to check it. So add up the average, the x minus average squared, and you should get 26, and variance is 26 divided by 3 minus 1. Now the 3 is your nums.count again, and the minus 1 is just minus 1 in the formula. When you get done, it should print 13. Now down here, this was our general loop for the average. For the variance, it's pretty much the same principle there, where you're looping. You're still looping from 0 to length of the array minus 1, but again, you already have that for the average, so you don't need to recreate that. Now this is what you need to change here. You have thus sum 2 equals thus sum 2 plus, and you take your array, whatever it's called, nums or whatever, and then x minus your average, and then like I said, there's an asterisk in between there for the multiplication. Questions on variance? Now you're going to have a string called out, and you got out is equal to empty string to begin with. Then you still have your same for loop, so it's still the same structure as this up here. And you got out is equal to out plus. Now here's what's a little bit different. And you guys probably got to know it better than I do. To change something to a data type, you type like string and then your array, whatever it is. When I say you guys know better than I do, is it capital S or lowercase s? Do you remember? Is it capital S? I guess that makes sense. The other one was capital F, wasn't it, for float? So a capital S for string. And this is what converts it to a string that allows you to concatenate them together. And then you'd write this out not to a text view, but to a label. Yeah. So this really hasn't changed very much. I'll print it out just in case you want it, though.
Okay.
Questions on that?
How do I know if I did this right on Android Studio?
You should get 13.
My variance isn't right.
I don't think it is. It's like exactly the same.
You should get 13.
For 3, 6, and 9.
No. Use 1, 3, and 8, the one I did in class. Because then you know what the answer should be. It should be 13.
Okay. I used 3, 6, and 9.
How do I print? File, print.
Okay. So what is it? 1, 3, 26.
It's close. Sounds like you didn't divide by your the number of entries minus 1.
I got the average. I got my 4, my average. My variance is like 26. He says wrong, and then my array is 1, 3, and 8. So like.
No, see what I'm saying here? You got this 26 here, so it looks like you just didn't divide by this.
So what would that be?
This is your number of entries in your array, which what's current index contain? That's here. Yeah, so like it goes from 0 to 3. Your current index is 3, isn't it? So you'd have your current index plus 1 minus 1. So just current index sounds like.
So just divided by current index.
You'd have to play with it and see which one works. But yes. Xcode.
Where did I even do that?
Okay, now I see what the problem was. I kept just adding on to your code, not deleting what was necessary.
Yeah,
Oh.
See, I
Yeah.
did variable equals the sum to divided by current index minus 1. That should have been right.
Did you debug?
I'm just going to do current index.
Oh, I haven't showed you debug, have I?
With Apple, you show me
Okay.
nothing.
Did I do a print 3 or 1? I did just 1. Print 2 more of those.
See? All I had to do is take away that minus 1.
And it worked?
4,
Yeah.
13, 3, and 8.
That's why it's so important to be able to do an example by hand, because then you can debug and you can see exactly what's happening. So that when I showed this right here, when I was showing this example right here, it's just like, well, why are you doing that? Well, that would allow you to debug. It would allow you to do, where you examine the results and see what it is happening.
Right.
Because you know what should happen. This is what should happen.
It's very satisfying getting an app that works.
Now, to debug something, if you're trying to figure out what's going wrong with something, you click over here, and it becomes a little, I don't know what that is, flag. And you can choose multiple ones of these. These set breakpoints.
They refer to like a bookmark or something.
No, they call it a breakpoint. But it does look like a bookmark on any other application. If you right-click on it, you can say delete breakpoint. It doesn't delete your line of code, just gives you that breakpoint. Now, if you have that set, up here, you see there's a debug menu. we're going to see that there's a lot of options here that we can use for debugging. Now, if I run it, and I type in 2, click my button, it kicks out at the breakpoint. And you see it's got a little green line here. If I put my mouse over this, this tells me what my current value of sum is. Look what the current value of sum is. 0.00000000151053248. Since we haven't set it equal to a value, that's its default value it sets equal to. Does that seem weird that it was set equal to that? Yeah. I don't know why it does that, but it hasn't run this line of code yet. Up here in your debug, you see there's a step into. Step into means go to the next line of code. There's a step over. I never really use step over. Step over means skip that line. So don't do it at all. I'm not sure why you'd ever want to do that, but there's a step over feature. Continue goes to the next breakpoint or just continues running the program. So if I do a continue, it goes down to this. Now if I put my mouse over the sum, maybe, it doesn't. Okay. Yeah, there it goes. You see how it pops up with 0? So that tells me my current value. Now if I put my mouse over index, that's a pretty big begin because it hasn't done that line of code yet. And if I put my mouse over any of the other ones like average, I can see what it's equal to. So now if I do a continue, and it's really helpful when you're doing a debug that you actually use these command here. Though I don't think that worked with us, did it? Didn't when we tried to do the F, it did something weird?
Oh yeah, because you have the you have a hotkey set for your like Zoom or your capture
Right.
software that interferes with Xcode, but we should be able to do it.
You should be able to do it. Yeah. So, but if you do another continue, this right here. So what is that? Control, Command, and Y. Then that'll go to the next line of code. If I did that, then you see it comes down here. Put a different number in here, like 3. Click my button. And it goes back here. And I see the sum is equal to 0 again. And the reason why it didn't is I didn't put a breakpoint here. You can at any point put a breakpoint there. And then if I do debug, continue, I'm going to try to do that. Control, Command, Y. Oh, it went down to here this time. Okay. So then, the sum is equal to 0. Over here, so that sum is equal to 0. If I come over here to nums, index is 0. It's bizarre it doesn't allow me to choose nums there. How bizarre. But down here, you see you got your variable names. You can see the values of them. Doesn't appear to work real well with arrays down here, unless it's somewhere else. You see, you also have T1, T2, T3, T4. So you can expand those. How bizarre! I can't see nums. Anyway, that's how you debug. Very good on debugging?